reach us, and I've got somebody in the office giving her a quick call. So right now, I believe we do have quorum. So we will start in about a minute. If everyone can please make sure to have their mic going ahead and starting the recording.
Yes, ma'am, it's going.
Thank you. Good morning. Today is Monday, April the 5th. This is the Cosmetology and Barber Examiners Board regularly scheduled meeting. A notice of the April 5th, 2021 meeting was posted to the board's website, including the date, time, and location, and that notice took place on August 3rd of 2020. Additionally, this meeting agenda has been posted to the website on Thursday, April the 1st. As is always the case, because we are doing these through WebEx, the link to this board meeting is on the board's website, along with a password for anyone in the public to be able to join us. We want to welcome everybody that's here with us today. And so before we get too far, let me go ahead and do a quick roll call vote to our board members to make sure we have quorum. And then I will turn it over to Hugh Cross, the attorney for the program, to read the statement of necessity. Once I call your name, board members, if you could unmute yourself to make sure that we've got quorum, and then we will proceed. Chairman Ron Gillihan.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Vice Chair Rebecca Russell.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly Barger.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Judy McAllister.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Patricia Parsons.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Mona Sappenfield.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Frank Gambusa. I will mark Frank out for the time being. Ms. Amy Tanksley.
I'm here, and I spoke with Frank this morning. He's planning to attend.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Ms. Anita Charlton. As I mentioned, I knew that she was not going to be able to join us, but just in case, so we'll have her out today. Ms. Yvette Granger.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Susan Witcher.
Here.
Thank you. And Ms. Janie Ross. Okay, so I will check back with Frank and Ms. Ross as we proceed. We do have quorum, board members, so we will get started. Hugh Cross, if you could, Hugh, go ahead and read the statement of necessity on the record for us.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. According to TCA Section 844-108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of the governing body must file such determination of necessity, including the recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based, with the Office of the Secretary of State no later than 2 working days after the meeting. Furthermore, TCA Section 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting require timely action by the body, that physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. This is the routinely scheduled meeting for the Tennessee Board of Cosmetology and Barber Examiners, and the purpose of today's meeting with the members attending by teleconference is to discuss the agenda as noticed on the website earlier. And that concludes the statement of necessity. I would just need a motion to accept that.
Tricia Parsons, I make a motion to accept.
Thank you, Ms. Parsons. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Judy McAllister, second.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. By roll call vote to accept the statement of necessity, Ron Gillihan.
Yes.
Becky Russell.
Yes.
Kelly Barger.
Yes.
Judy McAllister.
Yes.
Patricia Parsons.
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield.
Yes.
Amy Tanksley.
Yes.
Yvette Granger.
Yes.
Susan Witcher.
Yes.
Thank you. And Ms. Jamie Ross and Mr. Frank Gambusa. Still on. Okay. Thank you, board members, and thank you, Hugh. Next, we need an approval of the February 2021 board meeting minutes. Those were emailed to our board members about a week and a half ago, along with the documents that could be emailed. Do we have any changes or amendments needed? And if not, I would need a motion and a second to accept those.
Judy McAllister, I make the motion to accept.
Thank you, Ms.
Tricia Parsons,
McAllister.
second.
Thank you, Ms. Parsons. We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as they were presented by roll call vote. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
you, Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Yvette Granger,
Yes.
and Susan Witcher.
Yes.
Thank you so much, board members. Next on our agenda, and again, the agenda is posted on the board's website if we've got instructors or students that wish to participate. And again, we want to welcome all of you on the call. As you know, after the meeting, the recording is also posted online for students to be able to see. I'm going to turn it over back to Hugh Cross for the legislative updates. These were also emailed to the board members. Thank you, Hugh.
No problem. Yes, we've got a few legislative updates here. First things first, the rules update, the equipment requirement rules. The Attorney General's office has approved those rules, and I have since filed them with the Secretary of State and published a second e-notify message. We have an effective date in June. Other than that, the next step for these is to present the rules to the Government Operations Committee, and I have not been assigned a date for that, so I'm not sure when that will be. But we do have an effective date, June 12th for these rules. And we have a few statutes that are kind of out there I wanted everyone to be aware of. HB 0120, this is the domestic violence training requirement for licensees. This is the bill that requires applicants and licensees to obtain the 1 hour of online or in-person domestic violence awareness training. This bill has the support of the YWCA Nashville and Middle Tennessee, and it was passed recently on March 8th, 2021. Next up, we have HB 1427, and this is a caption bill. There's not a lot of information on it, but as it's written, it's an esthetician students' hours increase. As introduced, it increases the hours of instruction required for esthetician students under TCA 624122D3 to complete prior to seeking licensure. It increases those hours from 150 hours to 175 hours. And more practically, this bill adds 25 hours to the hours needed before an esthetician may provide services to the public. As I said, this is a caption bill. It's currently in Gen Sub pending an amendment. And that's all the information that I have on this bill at this time. And then lastly, we have HB 0915, and this is the esthetician practice waiver. It amends TCA 624109A3, providing an exemption for licensed estheticians working under the supervision of a licensed physician. As I understand it, this bill has passed the Senate and is currently moving through committees. And that is all the information I have on that bill at this time as well. If anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer those, but that concludes the legislative update.
Thank you, Hugh. Board members, if you have any questions, and if Hugh is able to answer, I know he'll be happy to. Okay, hearing no questions, we again were able to email these, but anyone that is interested, or instructors that are on the call, or students, as you know, the legislative process is still going on, so you're able to go directly to the legislative side for the state and look up every one of those bills. This was information only, so we will proceed with our meeting, and at this point we are on those appearing before the board. We have 2 schools that have applied for their initial license. So board members, these are the documents that were put on SharePoint, which is our protected shared drive for documents that have some confidential information, can't be emailed. So I will, as I go through these, read the page numbers on that presentation in case you have them open. So the first item we have is Hunt's Barber Academy. This is a new barber school. Mr. Brandon Hunt is participating on the call with us. He's able to answer any questions that the board members have. This is a revised application. The school is 1,900 square feet, and the application was previously presented at the February 1st, 2021 board meeting. At that time, several changes were noted and requested, as well as the catalog. And the request was for these updates to be put together and presented before you today at the April meeting. So Mr. Gillihan, I'm happy to turn this over to you and see if you had any other questions to ask of Mr. Hunt. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Roxana. Mr. Hunt, thank you for being here today. Give me just a moment. I'm just taking a quick glance back at some of my notes. I do recall as this was presented originally. As I have reviewed your application, Mr. Hunt, I've found still found a couple of things that are concerning to me. Maybe you can address those with us here this morning. I'll try to be brief. In your paperwork, I believe you still have several spots that are contradicting themselves in the fact that you require high school diplomas while in your catalog, while in your enrollment contract, you refer to 2 years of education. So we still have some conflicts on that, and we have some discrepancies regarding the ages of the applicants for your school. In some areas, you require the age to be 17. In other areas, you require the age to be 18. Can you address that for me just a little bit, please?
Changed them. I did see where I made some mistakes, and I changed everything. Even with the instructor program on my catalog, I changed the hours on those too. I made mistakes on that as well.
Okay, can you, regarding the hours in your catalog, can you tell me a little bit about what you changed? Because again, I'm still seeing several places where you have some inconsistencies in that. Can you tell me what you changed your hours to, please?
It was I had them for 450, and I think I changed them to where it was the required hours. Now.
Okay. Okay. For the board members, I'm sure you've all reviewed these as well. So if you have any input on this, please feel free to jump in for me. Mr. Hunt, and for the board members, on page 27 of our report, Roxana, there's in the student catalog, there's still some references to 40-hour weeks.
Correct.
Okay. For 60 weeks as full-time, and part-time is 20 for 120 weeks. I believe that's going to exceed maximum time frame schedules for some purposes, but and what I'm referring to is I think we have minimum attendance requirements, a certain number of hours. Is that correct?
Yes, with part-time and full-time, and then your full-time has a maximum of 48 in a week.
Right,
they can attend. Yes.
Right. Okay. Again, on page 23 of our report, board members, we still have the requirement for high school diplomas being listed, and that it's a mandate in his paperwork. I believe he's stating that that's a mandatory thing that he requires to keep in his paperwork. However, since we don't require that, I don't know how that would really affect us. I just see that's kind of a discrepancy. Page 27 of our report, the information refers to a different Barber College name. It refers to Vibe Barber College instead of Hunt's Barber College. So, Mr. Hunt, can you tell me a little bit about that one?
It's page 14 of your presentation, Mr. Hunt. Mr. Hunt? Hello?
He's on mute, I think.
Mr. Hunt, can you hear us? I don't know that I see him anymore,
Okay.
Ron. Do you? Oh, I do see him, but he's
I
on
see
mute.
him on mine.
Yeah,
Okay,
he is on mute.
that's okay. Well, I'll just move on here a bit. I would like to get a response to that whenever he can get back on unmuted. Members, on page 39, I see where he lists that the Master Barber program can be completed in 9 months on a full-time schedule. But again, he indicates that it is actually a 60-week course. So of course, that's well more than 9 months. These things, I realize that they're just potentially, some typographical things, but it looks like to me that this is still a little bit of confusion and a mess. And as a student enrolling in school, I might not really have a good understanding of what I'm getting into, particularly when the enrollment agreement itself is a little bit vague on the spelling out the specific hours and schedule for that student. So if Mr. Hunt, if you can still hear me, I'd like to ask you also to address how you ensure that the student knows precisely what hours they should be there and what schedule they should be on. I think the last note that I had on this, when a student is in the completion portion of the program, you're referring to completion documents in one place of reference in the catalog, and then a diploma in other places. Are you issuing a diploma or are you issuing a certificate? That might be important for the student to know. So if that's just a typo, that's an easy fix. But I think that's something that needs to be cleaned up as well. Roxana, those are the notes that I had made from this one. I'm sure the other members may have some comments or input on this as well. But if I could get him to address those couple of things, if he's still on the line with us, that'd be good.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for going over each of those in the event that he does need to listen back to the meeting and then, make sure to correct them. Trying to see if I see him. He might have.
I don't see him any longer.
Yeah, I don't either. So he might have struggled with the technology. If
Sure.
board members, if you've got any other items that I can take note of, then I will, Ron, let you kind of guide us. Do you want to come back and see if at the end Mr. Hunt is able to join us and answer? I think your point made that the school contract and information appears to have been a previous school's paperwork,
Yes.
and obviously not a lot, but many things have changed. And so specifically the board members rightfully review these closely and want to protect the students. And so you're very cautious of things being done correctly so that the students don't have any room for confusion.
I agree, Roxana. On this one, if the other members don't have any input at this time, let's postpone a vote on this one just a little bit and see if he's able to rejoin us. Okay.
That sounds wonderful. That sounds wonderful. Okay. So we will go without a vote on this one. Thank you, board members. Next is the other school application that we have, and this is on your presentation starting on page 42 all the way to page 80, what was available to you on SharePoint. This school application is, the school is called Sumadhi Spa Pro Aesthetics. This is a new specialty aesthetic school only. Ms. Tarika Fitzgerald should be on the call with us. I've not seen her name, so we'll make sure that, okay, thank you so much for joining us. This school is over 5,200 square feet. It is a new application curriculum. The blank enrollment agreement, the floor plan is available to you, her contingency plan. And I believe I have one example of one of the 5 students' contracts that I've received. So Mr. Gillihan, I'll turn it over to you and then Ms. Fitzgerald to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fitzgerald. Thank you for being with us. If you'll give me just a moment to get to my notes here. As I'm getting there, would you like to tell us a little bit about your aesthetic school?
Well, excuse me. Good morning, first of all, and thank you all for having me on the call. Overall, the aesthetic school, as you can see on the application of my documents, is page 5. My aesthetic school will be accepting transfer students because I've been an instructor for a few years, so I do know that there's usually quite a few students who never complete their hours. So that's one of the things that I want to do, is make sure that they do complete their hours. I will also offer advanced aesthetics, and in advanced aesthetics, we would just cover and put emphasis on some of those body treatments that are in the Miladies textbook that usually aren't emphasized during the typical aesthetics program. I will offer business consultation workshops, instructor training, along with the 750 hours. So all those additional things will come after the 750 hours, or will be offered to already licensed estheticians.
Okay, well, that kind of helps me to understand a couple of things just a little bit better, because some of it was a little bit unclear as I went through, and I thank you for your report there. Let's see here. On our report, members, on our page 51, Ms. Fitzgerald, you indicate that students are required to attend 30 to 40 hours per week as scheduled. Is there a place in your enrollment agreement where that is specifically hammered out? Because that's a 10-hour difference each week in their hours. And how would a student know whether they're supposed to be there 30 or 40 hours? Or something in between, because as I reviewed, I did not find that for myself. Can you tell me where that might be?
I was making a reference to the minimum to the maximum amount of hours, to the fact that I cannot accept more than 8 hours per day, and their minimum before they would be reprimanded for attendance. So that's what I was making reference to. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I do understand that. But in their actual enrollment agreement, I didn't see anywhere listed that student A is required to be here at least 30 hours, and those hours are from, I'm just making this up, from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. Is that in your enrollment agreement? Then I just did not find it.
Okay. So in the enrollment agreement on my documents, it's on page 2 of 6. So on page 2, you will see program schedule, 750 hours. It's underneath that. Students will be on campus from 10 to 2. So that's the maximum that they can get on campus through the week. So that's where there's a variation, because some are quite a few that I have who are interested in the program and who have submitted applications, they are working adults. So I have to make some modifications for their attendance for the hybrid hours.
Sure. Okay.
That's page 47, Ron, for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Roxana. Okay, for our members and for you as well, Ms. Fitzgerald, I guess what I'm getting at here is if an inspector is coming by to take a look at your school, and he comes in and he needs to verify who is there, how many students are supposed to be there versus how many are actually there, where is he going to find or is she going to find the information on who is actually scheduled to be there on that given day?
All students are required to be on campus during those hours. So I get your question now. So the hybrid hours are what's going to be flexible, but on-campus hours will not be. It's mandatory that they're there from 10 to 2 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move on down just a bit. Again, in a couple of places in your documents as well, you're stating that you require a high school diploma. And Roxana, of course, with the ruling we had last summer, last fall,
Yes.
does that apply to the estheticians as well?
So under the cosmetology statute under 62-4, the requirement is 10th grade education. That has never changed.
Okay,
So,
good,
so the
good.
ruling
That's
that
fine.
impacted us was the Barber side. So what that means, Ms. Fitzgerald, is that at least by our statute, you can accept someone that has finished 2 years of high school.
Yes.
Accredited schools need the high school diploma, but obviously it takes a few years to get accredited. So you do have the flexibility to accept students that have only done the 2 years. That's what the statute requires.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly where I was going.
And
Okay, I can
16
make
years
that
of
edit. I was
age.
unaware of that.
Yeah.
Okay, I
But
was
Miss-
aware of the 16 years of age, but I was unaware of the 10th grade education.
Yeah, that's always
But-
been the case.
Ms. Fitzgerald, just to avoid the confusion on that, I think really what is always catching my eye on that particular one is that while the board no longer requires that, as Roxana just stated, I suppose an individual school can set their standards more than the board in that. I don't know. So if you wanted to require it, you might be okay. That might get into some legal areas that I'm not qualified to speak about. But that's part of the reasoning in it. I just want to make sure people understand what was required or not required by us. So you're fine there. Okay. On page 53 on hours, you have on our report, and I'll try to get that page for you, Ms. Fitzgerald. It's either going to be on 7 or 8 for you, I believe.
Page 8 out of your 11, ma'am.
Yes. There's a statement regarding responsibility of the institution for school negligence or incompetence. I hope you're not trying to say that you're not properly supervising your students, that they would be doing something that's negligent. That statement just kind of stuck out in my mind when I saw it.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
They will always be supervised at all times.
Okay. All right. Page 54 on our reports, members indicates that the student will receive their basic kits at 150 hours and professional skincare kits at 300 hours. Roxana, I did not have an opportunity to look that up, but does the 100-hour regulation not apply on the estheticians for their kits?
So that's a wonderful question. Our rules that Hugh touched on that are in the pipeline to go into effect in June have requirements for the student kits. So we'll make sure that all school owners and instructors obviously get those when those rules push through. I don't think we've ever had we have never had different requirements for the kits based on the discipline, like, waiting for specific items pertaining to skincare versus manicuring and nails and hair.
Mm-hmm.
So I would refer you back, Ms. Fitzgerald, to the statute that simply says at which number of hours. And I want to say it's 120. It's either 120 or 150 that you have that the students need to have their kit.
Right. That number caught my eye.
I'm sorry, that's no problem. And so the thing about that is that the school will have supplies
Correct.
and everything for the students to use before those hours, but I can make that adjustment, so that won't be a problem.
Thank you very much. Let me get to my next note here. You had a reference, I believe, on our page 54 that refers to 20 students at a given time, or 20 students present at any time. Can you tell me a little bit about that reference? So it's probably around page 9 on your
I would only be able to accept 20 students per instructor.
Okay. Well, I knew that I knew that that was going to be a pretty simple one there. I just wanted to clarify that one a bit. Okay. When you were describing your program, you mentioned some programs and opportunities for someone who is already licensed. So I believe this is where this may go, but you can help me out. On page 51, you refer to a business consultation workshop. Is that one of the additional programs that you're doing that's not requiring, you're not looking for state credit on those, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So we don't have anything to say on that one. Within your documentation in your paperwork, as I'm looking for your curriculum in here, that was kind of an issue that really stood out to me. I see that you've listed essentially the Milady chapters, chapter and verse, as your statics course program. I believe you need to have the state's actual curriculum listed in there where you spell out how many hours for each aspect of each program is. I believe you did the same thing for the instructor component. You simply listed the Milady textbook chapters. Don't think that's going to quite cover the curriculum requirement on this. Do you understand what I'm talking about with that one?
Yes, sir. You're wanting me to make sure I verify. Well, I need to state on the curriculum where we would do state board curriculum hours. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. And I don't have that directly in front of me at the moment, but it will say so many hours on this part of the discipline, so many hours on that part of the discipline. And also in the instructor portion of this, again, it appeared to me that maybe you were doing training for some advanced techniques. In the instructor program, it's not about techniques at all. It's all about instructing, classroom arrangement, class development, curriculum, and those sorts of things. So I think I would really like to see that curriculum listed in there. Okay.
Could you repeat what it was that you were mentioning about the instructors program?
In the instructor program, as you all know, the instructor program is not about the practice of how do I do this advanced technique or how do I do that. It's about the communication part of it. It's how does that instructor create lesson plans and deliver lesson plans correctly for their students and guide them through the program. So it's not a if I can use something from the Barber vernacular here, the instructor doesn't need a class on how to cut hair. He needs a class on how to teach how to cut hair.
Correct. Teaching methodologies, yes.
So thank you. Thank you, Roxanne. That's the word I was looking for. It's teaching methodologies. So I did not see that any of that with your instructor at all. If it's in there, if you could direct me to it, I'd be happy to look at it.
Can you, if possible, could you tell me where you see that so I know where it's located? Could you tell me where that is listed in the document?
Just a second here. As I made my notes, I didn't necessarily go directly in order. Okay, on page 3 out of 13 in your document, you're speaking about the instructors and instructors work in a sanitary, pleasing environment, school setting, and so forth.
I gotta get you the tell them to go to the website.
On our report, it's on page 70. That's where I'm at right now for the members. And I really don't see much else about your instructor requirements. So I'm really not seeing anything about the instructor curriculum at all as well, is what I'm trying to say. I did have a question for you about the advanced aesthetics training. Did I understand correctly that that is an advanced thing that's you're not offering for credit hours?
Correct. It's not being offered for credit hours. It's going to be offered to licensed individuals.
Oh, thank you. I thought that's what I heard you say. Thank you so much.
Could you tell me when that advanced class would take place? Would it be during your normal business hours, or is that another time frame?
It will be offered during normal business hours and hybrid. Practical will be during normal business hours, and hybrid will be offered to their discretion alone.
Will you have a specific place that they can take this course that will prevent them from? I'm concerned that the students that are there for their hours in their basic aesthetics program would overlap with this group of advanced training, and those need to be in separate places if they are being held at the same time. So is there going to be an overlap?
No, ma'am. And I considered that. If you look at the floor plan, back where you see the second set of restrooms, there is a room that is to the left. I have a second entrance, and there's a room that's immediately to the left of that second entrance, but just before the hallway that has the second set of restrooms. That's where those advanced classes will take course. So at no time they would disturb the students receiving their required 750 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Mona Sappenfield. Hi, Terica. How are you doing?
Hello.
I would make a suggestion, maybe to specify advanced aesthetics training as postgraduate and only accept those that have really obtained maybe their license and taken their test, and they would come as a postgraduate study. And that might clear up some of the questions when we're just looking at it. You have mentioned in that, like threading, and that's just not something that estheticians are doing in Tennessee. And we've had some difficulties in the past with the schools offering courses on things that they actually, don't they are regulated in Tennessee. So I think it would clear it up if you had, your postgraduate separate from your Tennessee licensure, which, is a good 750 solid hours of what they, need to become licensed.
Okay, and that's perfectly understandable. I listed. I'm trying to go through my papers here, but it's listed on the student application that is preferred by the institution that the students for these advanced classes are licensed.
Hi, this is Patty Parsons. How many instructors will you be having to be able to do
I will have
both of the classes?
okay. I will have two, and one. The second instructor, she's bilingual.
Thank you.
Mona, this is Roxana. If I could go back to your question for just a second, on page 51 of our presentation, which is page 6 out of 11 that Ms. Fitzgerald presented, that's where she has the preferred statement she's mentioning. I don't know if that meets what you're suggesting, because that was something that Ms. Fitzgerald and I spoke about as well, offering all these extended items, some of which are not regulated by the state. But that's where it says it is preferred by the institution that students enroll in this course after becoming licensed in aesthetics. Does that meet what you're suggesting, or do you still, and I welcome, Ms. Becky has voiced some concerns, and Mr. Gillihan, does that protect the student enough and not, cause confusion on which courses should be going on at which time? Do you think that that covers it?
I think you found it.
Okay.
I was struggling to find it in there, but if it is stated, I think that would cover it, Roxana. I think that would make it very clear, much clearer.
Okay.
I would like to say that that kind of covers it, but I almost would like to see it state that it's preferred that they be a graduate or a requirement that they are a student. Because if I'm not mistaken, the way the law is written, you're not allowed to teach the practices of cosmetology or aesthetics in this course, in this case, outside of preparing them for licensure or to people who are already licensed. Because if it just says it's preferred that they have a license, then it doesn't indicate that it couldn't be just average Jane off the street.
That's not a problem. I can make those adjustments.
I had one other question about the schedule. It states that you have an online kind of a hybrid model, which is fine, but you do state that the hours are to be determined. And I'd like some clarification put in there as to what to change that from to be determined to the hours of operation. If you're just saying to be determined, you could determine at a later time that it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I think what you're saying with the to be determined has to do with if they are full-time or part-time. I think that's what you're trying to state, but I think it still needs
Yes,
to
ma'am.
say in there a specific time frame. So it would be to be determined, but between hours of 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or whatever those online hours are.
Okay, so Jess, so you're saying that I should put the because that's pretty much the 10 to 2. There's going to be the standard hours. However, for those students who need modification, I'm willing to modify those hours if I have to get back online with them to discuss the theory, and then they will carry on and complete the theory on MindTap. So, yeah. So, are you saying that I need to put in the document, just put instead of TBD, go ahead and put the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.?
You can put 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then, you can add a little extra, something down at the bottom that says, to be discussed as to what is needed, but there needs to be a specific time, because you can't just tell them go on MindTap and complete this information whenever you want to, because if they don't have, they have to be under the direct supervision of an instructor, and if they're completing that time whenever they want to outside of when a instructor is available, they are not under the direct supervision of an instructor. There still has to be an instructor available. So that's the time frame that needs to be posted there.
Okay. But yeah, so everyone who I've spoken to, they're aware, but I will make sure that I put that in my documents. They're aware that the standard hours are 10 to 2 and 10 to 3 when necessary, but office hours are from 9:30 to 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Since we're still talking about schedules here, I'm going to kind of go back to a previous thing, and I think Becky just really covered that very, very well. I think in your documentation, Ms. Fitzgerald, I think that we're looking for a lot more specificity on what time, and that's documented for the student, that they're acknowledging, they're aware of what their expected attendance is supposed to be on every given day that they're supposed to be there. Because I'm looking at something here that says that your catalog has a requirement to students that as necessary, they may be required to attend at least one Saturday per month from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Okay, now your other, I believe, said 9 to 2 or 10 to 2. Elsewhere in your paperwork here, so there's a discrepancy in there. So how is a student to know what Saturday they may be required? How often that's going to come up? Is it every month, or I didn't see anything.
I can definitely specify on that and make it where it's clearly recognizable for you all. So Saturdays will be used for those students who need to make up hours.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that will be once per month.
Oh, so you'll use that as a makeup day. Yeah, if it's it says you have a requirement as necessary that they be required. So what are the circumstances that you would require them to do that? I think the student needs some information on that so that they know exactly what they're buying and what they're getting into. I'm sure you can understand where we're going with that. So
Yes, sir.
let's see, just a couple more here, and we may have covered some of them already. Your hybrid program, that is where you're intermixing some of the online work, and I believe I understood that correctly. Let's see here. I'm looking at something on page 78 of our report. You have a requirement or a reference to students having a total of 50% of their contracted time to complete the training, or 150% of the time to complete their training. I'm sorry, I'm not reading this well. Give me just a moment. Oh, if a student has not completed their time, then you're requiring the remaining work to be off campus. What do you mean by that?
Their theory will be received. The rest of their training, they will have to complete it online. It will be off campus.
Okay, so just a moment.
Because from my understanding, they have to be given a total of 18 months to complete, correct?
Yes, but I believe also you had something regarding their practical work in there as well, that they're going to complete their practical work. Let me get over to
The practical portion?
Yes.
The practical portion, they will be allowed to come on campus to complete that, and that is referring to anything practical, including state board. So that would be to prevent the classes from being too mixed up and to prevent any confusion as far as what level the students are on and where they are in which group. So yeah, so after they've reached that 18-month mark, then they will be required to complete everything theory online, and then we will set an appointment for them to come in to complete practical.
Okay.
Ms. Fitzgerald, if I could interrupt you, this is Roxana. Where are you getting the 18 months time thought?
Unless that has changed, I was under the impression, I remember reading that the students have to be given a total amount, up to 150%, so time and a half.
That is for your apprenticeship students. So apprenticeship students on their contract must get time and a half compared to your traditional students. So 750 hours in reality could be finished in 9 months, probably for a full-time student without any problem. So if your contract was to finish hours within 9 months, and that's your decision, we don't dictate that. If your full-time students are to finish in 9 months, your apprenticeship students, their contract must provide them 1.5 times to get it done because of, part-time or the full-time doing apprenticeship under a supervising professional could still need more time. That's where the 1.5 times came in.
Oh, thank you, Roxana.
You got it. Absolutely. I apologize, Ron. It's back to you.
Oh, no, that's perfectly fine. You actually touched on something that's on my note here. I was not understanding that. Ms. Fitzgerald, when I look at your program here,
Ron, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roxana. I was just saying that in what I'm looking at right here, you've done a pretty good job on getting your information together. However, there's still several things that really bother me a little bit. And it really has to do with the student understanding and knowing precisely what they're getting, what schedule are they locked in on, when are they expected to be in attendance, how that's within their enrollment agreement, what are the requirements for graduation, how are they going to know, because I don't see the state board curriculum anywhere in your work. So those are some things that I really think need to be taken a look at. And then the couple of other things you clarified pretty well that might just need to be some typographical kind of work. I really don't like to postpone presentations on any shops or schools. Personally, I'm thinking that this needs to have a little work. It needs to be represented. That's just my opinion. I'd love for the other members to weigh in here. If we can get that curriculum in there, get those enrollment agreement items clarified, is this something that needs to be represented at our next meeting? Is this something that we can let Roxana take a look at?
If I could interject, each and every, and it's inside my application as well, and the catalog as well. Each and every applicant, we will have a meeting before they're actually enrolled. So that's what we do. We go through everything to make sure that they clarify, and then we will set their schedule. So, and that is to be done to make sure that they understand the requirements of them completing a hybrid program.
Okay. I think that's a great idea. I still think that for the good and protection of students, that everything needs to be clearly spelled out so they know exactly what they're getting and what their requirements are and how that's all going to go through. Becky, do you have any ideas? Any of the other members? Patty?
I feel like it needs more clarity in each specific program for the students to understand what they're signing in for and then make it more clear. And her hybrid program needs to have some hours that set, like Becky was talking about, that hit on me.
I think the business model looks incredible. I just think that clarity is needed in too many areas to put this on Roxana and her team. I mean, we are asking for quite a few items to be addressed. So I think that we do need some work in a represent.
Terica, it's a great business plan and idea. I think for just the regulatory part of what you're trying to do here with your whole concept, maybe you should just resubmit an extraction of that and leave all the the segment that's postgraduate out of there and be very particular as the school owners are asking and instructors, because how long have you been instructing? I know it's been many, many years. Yeah.
I can't remember. I want to say I've been instructing for almost 7 years.
Yeah, about that long. So I know you know how to formulate what these instructors and school owners are asking you at this meeting. So how long would it take you to sit down and get it cleaned up and written and resubmitted so that you can target when you're opening?
24 to 48 hours.
The problem there is, Mona, the board doesn't meet again until June 7th. So is the board suggesting, and we don't have a motion yet, but I was getting from Ms. Russell that she wanted it represented in June. I think you're guiding her toward hurrying up and getting it done in a matter of 2 days.
Well, we've done that in the past with a few people, not in 2
Right.
days, but basically, are we so far off track that it cannot be redone and then have administrative look at it and we can vote on that, of course. But I think with Miss Fitzgerald's history that I'm familiar with, that she would know how to do this, and if there was an oversight, and because I've gone through this and I thought, well, where is it? So it was an oversight of just putting it in writing in the plan to specify how we approve all the schools so that we're consistent. Then paperwork is one thing, but an intent. So I don't like holding up somebody till June that has put this much thought into getting this together, because I'm sure she has students in the wings waiting. Is anybody ready to put it into a motion to maybe let it, put this as a cleanup on Miss Fitzgerald, and let Roxana's administration help make the decision for opening? Can we do that, buddy?
Miss Russell, you were kind of on the opposite side. Could you let us know kind of what you think, so we can have the conversation and go? I think you and Mona are seeing it a little bit differently.
I would almost have to go through it page by page. I mean, Ron and I have picked out several different things that we were just uncomfortable with, and I just think that comprehensive list is just a lot of, and I wasn't taking notes along the time that we were talking, so I don't know if we could get together a comprehensive list in the next, couple of minutes to say, it's this page you need to change this, and that page you need to change that, and adding all of the pieces. I just don't know if we are able to give your team a list quickly enough for you all to make this determination. And again, I'm up for discussion on that.
Miss Fitzgerald, have you made a list of what you've been asked to do during this meeting, and maybe you could read that list and make a statement as to your to get your preparedness to get that list ready in so much time for the board?
Yes, ma'am. So pretty much everything that's mentioned, that you all mentioned, it's great that you mentioned it that way, because I'm the person who created the document. So I have an understanding, but I needed that perspective from which you all see it on things that weren't clarity. But as far as the program as a whole, everything has been completely thought out, because I've taken concepts from schools that I've worked for in the past, and as far as things that I want to do with students to make sure that they get what they need for their required 750. I have the note which Ron mentioned earlier about where he and Roxana clarified 16 years of age versus the 10th grade education. I've made notes to, instead of doing the 150 hours for the first kid, 100 hours for their first kid. Also, I took notes for Ron mentioned state board curriculum needed to be listed in the curriculum, and which the reason why I did not list that is because typically in the past at schools, once they've completed everything else, the state board curriculum has always come within the last 2 weeks. So that's not a problem. Also, I took note from where, Mona, you mentioned that I should clarify on the list of programs that I'm offering, separate postgraduate from the necessary requirements. And also, it was mentioned about the to be discussed, which I told you all that I had already had the intention of the program being from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And on campus to 3 p.m. And office hours will close at 5. I can make that notification. That won't take long. Also, Ron mentioned on the Saturdays, I mentioned in the documents that a student may be required to attend one Saturday per month. And as I stated, that would be for students who are needing to make up hours. So yes, I have a full list of notes from the things that you all have critiqued that I need to correct.
Becky, does that sound good to you?
Ms. Fitzgerald, I do want to go back to the curriculum. I think what Ron is asking you to do is put the state's curriculum in as far as what general, physical, and chemical hours are and how much time is to be spent in those, not just the
Correct.
state law. I think you're thinking he wants you to put in a state law class, but he actually wants you to
Okay.
list for the
Okay, repeat
student.
that for me.
Yeah. So, and that's listed in the rules on the board's website.
The other piece that I think was dropped off or maybe not mentioned yet was the instructor piece. Your documents list your instructor program, as Ron sort of mentioned, as teaching the services, and it's about the teaching methodology. So the instructor piece
Okay. And
you
so
touched
that
on.
was my question. That piece where I emphasized, where you read that he read that I emphasized on techniques. I was trying to locate that to see where I made that statement, so I would know where to correct it. However, I can go in and put instructor's curriculum because I have one. I just condensed all of my documents so that I wouldn't submit so much. So I already have that saved, so I can install that. So on the instructor's curriculum, what exactly is it that you all are requiring for a school to have listed?
It's in the rules, just like Ms. Russell mentioned. The instructor curriculum is broken up 100 hours. It's your general, your physical, and your practical, and it's all about teaching, not
Okay.
actually learning the better service, if you will.
Okay, I have that noted.
Do we have any other discussion or comments? Do we have a motion?
I will make a motion. Just a moment. I will make a motion that we would agree as a board that Ms. Fitzgerald has her checklist. She's going to redefine, give definitions of all the things that have been asked for her, and resubmit to administrative to the team, and that the board would be fine with the administration's finding and rule on opening.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mona Sappenfield and a second by Mr. Frank Gambusa, and it's my understanding that it is based on the list that we've gone through and then quickly reviewed. It will also be on the recording posted on the board's website in a couple of days, and so I want to make sure that nothing is missed, and Ms. Fitzgerald will be able to go back through and listen to it all to find it. If the board, with this motion second, will bear with me, I will do roll call vote. And at this point, we're voting to approve this application once my office has had a chance to review and go over it as best we can. And at this moment, if that goes through and it's approved, we would have a field inspector and board member go to inspect before the school can open, given it's a new school. So I believe that is my motion. Mona and Frank, does that sound correct, or your motion?
I think we've got it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Roll call vote. Mr. Ron Gillihan.
Roxana, with all due admiration and respect to your staff and the massive amount of work they do, I appreciate it. I'm gonna have to vote no on this. I would actually like to see this and see that it's clarified. So I'm gonna vote no.
Perfect. I understand, and I've got that duly noted. Ms. Becky Russell.
No.
Thank you, Becky. Ms. Kelly Barger. Ms. Barger, you're on mute. There you go.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I'm going to vote no, just based on what we require other applicants to provide.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Judy McAllister?
I'm also going to vote no.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. Ms. Patricia Parsons?
I'm going to vote no because of the clarity that's needed for the students' benefits.
Thank you. Ms. Mona Sappenfield?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Frank Ambusa?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Amy Tanksley?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Yvette Granger?
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Yvette?
Yes.
You're voting yes. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Susan Witcher?
I'm going to have to vote no.
Thank you, ma'am. And Ms. Janie Ross, I don't know if you're with us. Are you on the call, Ms. Ross? Okay, she's still not with us, so I'm going to take a quick count. We have 6 no's and 4 yeses, and that is accurate. I've got 10 members participating. Ms. Fitzgerald, the motion did not pass. So based on the no's, the board wants the corrections made, and you can send them as quickly as you have them, but they will be represented at the June 7th board meeting.
Thank you, Roxana.
Thank you. Thank you. Board members, thank you. That concludes our appearing before the board. I'm going to turn it over to Michael Underhill for the legal report. That is the document that was emailed to you, and I will go ahead and put myself on mute. Mike, it's all yours.
Excuse me, Roxana, I think
Yes,
I
sir.
saw Mr. Hunt back on just a few minutes
okay.
ago. And we can
Yes.
still come back to his case if he makes it back. I don't see him now.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you for catching that. I'll as soon as we finish the legal report, and if you catch him at any point, we can always interrupt to get his resolved. Thank you. Mike, it's all yours.
Good morning. We have 109 items on the legal report today, 85 of which are cosmetology cases. We have 13 barber cases, and then 11 represents. So if there are any questions on any of those 109 items, I will do my best to answer them. And I presume you'll need you'll need a few minutes to look through.
Right. I was just going to say thank you so much, Mike, and give us just a couple of minutes. There may be some questions.
I had a question about number 5 on our report. It says that the annual inspection revealed several unsanitary conditions, which have been a consistent problem, but it looks like we're only sending out a letter of warning. Is there a reason that we didn't issue a civil penalty?
I noticed that there was no previous complaint history. If I remember correctly, that may have been a quote from the inspection report. So I can only presume that the inspector may have counseled that person. But now I guess since it was more of a problem, they decided to go ahead and bring it to light. So usually on a first offense notice of violation, we issue a letter of warning on that.
Becky, this is Roxana, and that's a great point. Back to Mike's point, unless a notice of violation actually opened a complaint, we don't really do the warnings. I think way back prior to me getting here in 2013, it was something that inspections sometimes did. They you know, verbally talked about these things, but that's not our path and hasn't been since then. So I don't know, without anything concrete as having opened a case, whether the inspector has seen some minor things and talked about it, but I'll make sure that that's addressed as well, because if there's any sanitation concerns or violations, we open a complaint. That's what we should be doing. Does that help some?
It does. I might suggest that we re-inspect just
Yeah.
to make sure the sanitation conditions have been corrected.
Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mike.
I also have a question about number 18. I understand that the school is saying that the instructor has been let go, but does it say anything about inaccuracies with the hours that were filed? It concerns me that if they did fire an instructor, then were those hours accurate that were turned in, just because of the claims that were being made? And I'm not sure that I know that it's, you know, something that's outside of the scope of the board's authority to deal with what the complaint is, but it is within our scope to make sure that those hours are calculated properly. I don't want them to just be given free hours and then feel like they're not learning. They didn't learn if they weren't in school.
I don't remember that being a part of the actual complaint. But what I can do is I can contact the school and see, I guess, how they dealt with that issue. So what I'll do is I'll pass that to the next legal report, and I'll get in touch with the school and talk to them about that issue and see what their response is.
Thank you.
Mike, could you kind of give us some more information on case number 56, please?
Okay. On case number 56, my recommendation is to close that, and the reason why, we have the allegation, but there was nothing sent in support with that. And so when the inspector went out and found no evidence of that particular infraction and did not issue a notice of violation, that would be my recommendation to close. We have no evidence either way on that. But an inspection was conducted. And so, you know, there was basically a lack of evidence to support the allegation.
Thank you.
Roxana, can you fill us on case 85, the school that's being violation for lack of inspections.
I'm sorry, what item was that again?
Sorry,
It's a school
number,
complaint.
yeah, it's number 85.
Okay.
My only
Page
questions is that
30.
clearly this
Yeah.
is going to impact students, and do we have a timeline on that, et cetera?
Mike, I can answer or I can let you. This is obviously, you can see from the complaint history, lots and lots and lots of complaints, right? I want to make sure that the board reads the recommendation that Mike has put through, because that might, Amy, kind of answer your questions. But yes, the note and summary that Mike has presented is accurate. We've really not had a complete, if you will, or an inspection where we can see students and look at their files.
And what is the next step if they don't volunteer their license?
Mike?
We would move to a formal hearing for revocation, and this is a joint barber and cosmetology school. Let's see here, 85 is the cosmetology, and then number
98.
98 would be the barber. So we would move to a formal hearing, and that would be before the board with an administrative law judge presiding.
Thank you. Would that be represented then, say in June for us if it moves forward?
If it quickly moves forward, yes. Otherwise, it would probably be the August meeting. It just depends.
That's fair. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy.
The first of the Barber cases, number 86, it looks like they do not have running water at this location. Can you tell me, are they up and running for business? I'm a little unclear as to what they're doing.
On that one, it is my understanding that they are operating. And when I looked at the file, if I remember this one correctly, letters of warning were sent out with regard to the water issue. But I can also set that for a reinspect if that's the board's prerogative.
I would definitely want to reinspect, and if they do not have running water, then they're not washing their hands, which has to happen with every service. So that scares me a lot.
Okay, I've got that noted.
Yeah, I guess I'd also like to follow up on these two cases, their barber cases, about these barbers who are set up, not actually cutting a client, just to flag those for follow-up. It's case number 89, and then 90. You've got two folks who have workstations and are set up, but not actually with a client at the time of the inspection. Seems kind of odd that you wouldn't have a license, but you'd be set up and ready to go. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm having a hard time as I'm going through this seeing multiple cases where people are advertising who don't have a license. One of them has business cards with hours of operation. I mean, there's just multiple things. And I know that we're having a hard time catching those folks because they have to be actively engaged. But moving forward, and this is something that's probably way down the road, I think we may be able to introduce a rule that has to do with the advertisement of services that fall under cosmetology and barbering. If you're advertising, then you have the intention. If you're advertising for pay that you are offering services, then you have the intention of breaking the law. And I didn't know if that would be legal to do, but in the law, it does state in 62-4-112 that if a school directly or indirectly advertises for clinical patrons without clearly disclosing that services will be performed by a student within a school, then that would be breaking the law for them. So I feel like there might be some leadway there as to we may be able to say that you can't advertise for services for pay if you don't have a license. I'd like to look into that at some point.
Here's what we have on that. We do have a criminal statute, 39-16-302, impersonation of a licensed professional. And what we can do on those cases where we do have social media proof or screenshots or booking sites where we can't catch them in the act, Roxana, I mean, jump in on this one if you want to. We can refer those to the county law enforcement and district attorney where that is allegedly occurring, and on those individuals, this is for persons, not entities, we can refer those out and have law enforcement or the district attorney's office attempt to follow up on that.
And Becky, this is Roxanne. I think you make a great point. That statute that you read is specific to the schools. Many of our regulatory boards do have actual law or rules about false advertising. I think you make a great point, and Hugh and I will talk about it to see if it's something that through rules, we could word something like that. To Mike's point, yes, we could do that. The only thing I want to caution the board is our authorities, as many government offices and agencies, they have their hands full with a lot of things, right? And our volume of these snippets from Facebook, Twitter items, this person says they're doing this and they'll send us from the phone the picture. It is false advertising, and it is very possible that they're working without a license. All that's true. I just don't know, and I'm not giving the answer, but rather posing that to our board members, if we want to give this volume of items to authorities who have bigger things possibly to look at. It's just something to think about. We have in this legal report a few recommendations of really bigger things that do need to go to the authorities. When our consent or when our revocation has gone through and the shop has been told to close and they're not, I think that's a little bit bigger than this person that's advertising in Facebook, and we can find the entity easier. Just something to think about. The path of looking at this rule, I think, is a really good one, and you and I can talk about it and update the board in June. What is the option regarding advertising? And as Mike suggested, if you do want to add this on these for us to hand that over to other authorities, we can do that. I just don't know that that's the best use of their time.
I don't know that referring it out to another entity is the best course of action
Correct.
for now. But I think we might want to think about that in the future if it's something that we have warned them about and they continuously do, or if there's some kind of harm to the public. I mean, if they have actually
Egregious.
harmed someone, then I think that might be a real concern that we would refer it out. Maybe not to all of them, because they would have to hire a whole new staff of people to
They
do it.
couldn't do it. Yeah, we get a lot of these, and sometimes it's just images from Facebook that we can't even follow up enough on. So it comes in every direction. But Becky, I love your idea of us looking at the rule, and then for now, I think, Mike, on all of these, if it's a shop, you do have a letter of warning and flag. I think what I heard Ms. Tanksley say is, or one of our board members, that we want to go back and re-inspect to make sure that if they were set up for a booth of some sort, that they got licensed, right? Follow-up.
Yes, there was one that I do have for that, I believe. And we'll recap these when we're done.
Okay. Thank you.
And Roxanne, let me say this with regard to the shops that have licensing issues, that statute 29-3112, unlawfully engaging in a business or profession, that's not really under the criminal statute, but apparently it is considered a public nuisance, and it says it may be accomplished by injunction. So that may be something we could refer to the Attorney General's office to go into that specific county and ask the court for an injunction to keep them from operating.
For the shops. Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds
for the
good.
shops.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
I mean, I know personally it's been a really difficult year, being a shop owner with all of the rules and all of the changes and everything, the hoops to jump through. You know, I emphasize with everyone who does own a shop, but Roxanne, I do feel strongly that if we're not doing anything about this, I mean, there are quite a few on our report today. If we're not doing anything about this, this just gets worse. If it's so easy for someone to be working from home and not answer the door for an inspection, or not being able to be followed up on, or to be set up ready to take a client but not actually have a client, and we don't follow up, I mean, in my experience, you know, we know when the inspector comes, he's usually not coming back for a while. You know, you think you're in the free and clear, and that just, I don't know that that sets up anyone for success in our industry by just letting these things go.
No,
Ms.
I
Ron,
agree.
if I could add one more little thing on there, I know sometimes, particularly with phone calls I get frequently, there's a misconception or misperception that as long as someone is saying that they're working for free or not charging for their service, that it's okay. Statute clearly says that for pay or not. So either way, if they're not licensed, then that's still not permitted.
Okay, I have one more. Sorry, I'm just wearing you out today. Number 27, I would like a letter of warning sent to the email of that respondent. I also wondered if we might be able to send a letter of instruction to the motel, either owner or manager, just saying that there has been a report of an unlicensed shop, and just so that they know what's going on, because the owner or manager may police that for us.
Okay. I have that noted on 27.
Do we have any other questions or concerns? We would need a motion to accept the legal report with the notations that have been made.
Mr. Gillahan, can I go ahead and recap these first just to make sure I'm on the same page?
Please, absolutely.
Okay, on number 5, we're going to do a letter of warning and reinspection on that one. Then on number 18, I will contact the school to see if there were any inaccuracies in the hours that were filed by this terminated individual, to make sure that the hours have been calculated properly. That's number 18. And then on number 27, we will send a letter of warning to the email address on file, and then also send a letter of instruction to the motel person in charge that there has been an allegation of an unlicensed shop made, and then, you know, give that person as much information that we have in the complaint so that they can identify that individual and also keep an eye on that individual. And then we also have number 86. Instead of closure, that will be a reinspection on the water issue. And as far as any amendments, those are the ones that I have amendments for. Are there any others for amendments? If not, I would respectfully request a motion to accept as amended or approve as amended.
I will make a motion to approve as amended. This is Amy Texley.
Patricia Parsons.
Thank you. We have a motion by Ms. Amy Tansley, and we have a second by Ms. Patricia Parsons to accept the legal report as amended by roll call vote. All in agreement, Mr. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Ms. Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Ms. Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Frank Ambusa,
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tansley,
Yes.
Ms. Wybeck Granger, Ms. Wybeck Granger, okay, I don't see Ms. Granger with us. Ms. Susan Witcher,
Yes.
thank you. That concludes the legal report. Thank you, Mike. We are going to move on with the application for examinations. If the board members need a break, please let me know. Otherwise, on your presentation that was on SharePoint, the applications for exams start on page 82. And if you'll give me a minute, I'll make sure I'm on the right page. Thank you. You have before you applications for examination for Ms. Niyalika Brooks, Atu Campbell, Brandy Jefferson, Vicki Christensen, and Kanisha Williams. These applicants have felonies within the last 3 years and or are currently incarcerated. The request from them is to take the Tennessee examinations. They have submitted to the board the required information, which includes disclosure from the student or the individual, a letter recommendation as well from the school that they attended. The board traditionally does agreed orders for a probationary 2-year period unless the board would like to make some changes on any or all of these applicants. I will give you some time to review, and otherwise I would need a motion and a second to proceed with the agreed orders, as is our tradition.
Judy McAllister, I make the motion to approve with the 2 years agreed citation.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. We have a motion to approve all of these with the 2-year agreed order. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Mona Sappenfield.
Thank you, Mona. By roll call vote, Mr. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
thank you, Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Ambusa, Frank Ambusa, I see Frank, but I don't hear him yet. Ms. Amy Tansley,
Yes.
thank you. Ms. Wybeck Granger, and Ms. Susan Witcher.
Yes.
Okay, we still have quorum, so I believe we're okay. We will proceed to our.
Is here.
Oh, Ms. Ross, thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome. I've got you on with us. Thank you very
I've
much.
been here for a while.
Okay, well, we haven't voted in a minute other than the legal report.
Yeah.
So we are now on our applicants to test. On your presentation, if you will please turn to page 100. We have an application, I apologize, 101. This is an application from Ms. Vita Vila Ramirez to accept her aesthetics education and experience and approve her to take the Tennessee exams. Ms. Vila provided translated documents showing hours of education, certificates of completion, her full resume and credentials from Mexico, Belgium, and Pennsylvania. She was working today and unable to join us on the call, but at this point, I let we'll let the board members review. It looks like between experience and education, she has what is needed. So I welcome any questions. If not, we would need a motion and a second to be able to put her through to test.
Patricia Parsons, I make a motion to put her into test.
Thank you, Ms. Parsons.
Mona Sappenfield, I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Sappenfield. I figured you would like looking at her credentials, so I appreciate that. We have a motion and a second by roll call vote. Mr. Ron Gillihan?
Yes.
Thank you. Becky Russell?
Yes.
Kelly Barger?
Yes.
Judy McAllister?
Yes.
Patricia Parsons?
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield?
Yes.
Frank Ambusa? Amy Tansley?
Yes.
Vivek Granger? Susan Witcher?
Yes.
Thank you. And Janie Ross?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a request from Mr. Josh Crowder. His application starts on our presentation on page 170. Mr. Crowder is asking for us to accept his attestation and diploma and approve him to take the Barber exams pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated 62-3-110B. Any person who desires to register as a master barber must complete 1,500 hours in a registered barber school before applying for the exams. Mr. Crowder submitted an attestation form stating that he completed the 1,500 hours between 2010 and 2011 at the International Barber and Style College. That barber school is closed. He also submitted a diploma stating he graduated on October the 6th, 2011. Those records are on page 170 through page 175 for you to be able to review and look at his attestation. At this time, the board office did retrieve the boxes that those school hours should have been in, and we were unable to find that time span for those hours. I have as one of our topics at the end of the board meeting under new topics to discuss the records retention period for schools, and we can discuss that further at that time. But given what you are seeing from Mr. Crowder, he has some records that I know in the past we've reviewed and accepted if school hours that go that far back were not able to be retrieved. So I'll turn it over to the board for questions or concerns and see if we do have a motion to put them through.
Well, Roxana, to be clear, we don't, we haven't been able to locate any records from the time period that he's attesting to from the school.
Correct, sir. We've got,
And
right. Back then, as you know, we weren't able to scan, so we do have these in
right.
out of the building storage. But for that school during that particular time, we couldn't see him on it. And at the end of the meeting, or when we get to new business, I do want us to discuss these situations. They don't happen often, but we have a lot of boxes still in storage that are way past that retention period. So these hours would fall under the 7-year requirement. And obviously we're in good shape because everything from 2012 on has been scanned and is in our system. And now we even have provided a registration number, if you will, for the public schools and the Tennessee College of Applied Technology School. So even though we don't license them, we keep their hours now electronically, which is going to save in the long run ever running into this. So it's a great thing, but it doesn't help us with some back situations. Mr. Crowder is lucky he did have this certificate, this degree copy. Sometimes they don't. So he was able to provide that and attest it to the hours, but you are correct. We weren't able to actually find them.
You know, I'm looking at the certificate of achievement here. It does have a signature But I don't see any kind of a stamp or anything like that. As I was reviewing this previously, the particular case, I have a lot of sympathy for this gentleman that there were no records to be found, and I'm kind of mixed feelings on this one myself, because certainly we want to give people the benefit of the doubt where we can.
Correct.
Did he have any other kind of records at all other than this certificate that we're seeing here?
That is all he had, and in some cases we have even less than that when they go, that far back, unless they took out, financial aid. That might have been different, and that was not the case here. So this is all Mr. Crowder had. He came in the building, so I was able to speak with him.
Okay.
But again, it's his attestation and that certificate. I have a feeling we may run into these things just because I've seen an increase in individuals waiting maybe to find a second career or to follow up on the career that they stopped for some reason. And so in many cases, they're studying something else. And so what I've been giving a lot more of is letters stating that the school closed in 1995 or 2003. That's all I can say, because those records are so old that we would not have access to them. And the new institution the students are going to is accepting that fact. For a long time, they were not. So I don't know if that's a sign of the times and people going back to school or changing careers, but there's a definite increase in that. So in this case, he's wanting to come back and test. He's never taken any of the exams.
Okay. Roxana, I get that part of it. I'm curious whether or not he ever actually registered with the testing agency. Were we using PSI in 2011?
Yes.
Okay.
We were, but it was a manual process. So he would no longer be in PSI. When the PSI
Right.
data is dropped in 3 years, it literally is dropped. So there's no way they could trace it because it's so big. So I thought of that for a minute, and that dropped in 3 years is literally what that means. So we wouldn't be able to find it. And he did not. He did let me know that he had not even attempted to test. He finished the hours, and I guess life moved on.
Okay. Well, thank you, Roxana.
Thank you, sir.
This is Patricia Parsley. If he says that could show that he's school, he doesn't have no.
Patricia, you're choppy. I apologize. Maybe I'm the only one that wasn't able to hear you.
Let me move back to where closer to the router.
There you go.
Okay, I feel like if he has attended and taken his classes, he would pass the test, and if not, he would fail them.
Correct.
So I feel, even the information not being there, and just hoping and trusting that we have done this before for some other ones, I believe that we were not sure of, but I want to make a motion to put him into test.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Parsons. We have a motion to go ahead and approve his documents, and the board office put him in to take the exams. Do we have a second?
Judy McAllister, a second.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. By roll call vote, Mr. Ron Gillihan.
Roxana,
Yes.
if you don't mind, can we have just a little bit more discussion on this? I guess a question that I would pose to everyone before we vote is, what do we do next meeting when we have 75 people who have a diploma of some type that they printed up? And I'm not saying that this gentleman did at all. I'm not suggesting that whatsoever. But what do we do when we have 75 diplomas show up and say, hey, I have a letter of attestation that I attended the school somewhere at some time? Based on the minimum things that I'm seeing here, is that going to be good enough to allow anybody that wants to test to test?
I from 2012 on, you've scanned everything, right? This should be the last year where they could come back. Is that correct, Roxana?
It is, and
Okay.
we have found many of the older documents. It's just not always happened. So that is the concern, and it is the reason, Mr. Gilhan. Back to your question, I have it on our agenda to really dig into this conversation from that perspective. The records retention that we have to follow says that these will be kept for 7 years. Obviously, now with technology, that's not even a problem because they're scanned. But for the older ones, we've not yet given the permission to shred any boxes. We had some boxes damaged in 2010 with the flood. I don't know that these, that our monthly hours would have been among those. I don't think that was the case, but in one of the programs that I have, that was the case. Many boxes were destroyed with the flood. So it's a conversation that I agree we do need to have. I don't know that we'll get the 75, but we could. So your question makes perfect sense. And based on Ms. Parsons' motion, if the logic is we put them to take the exams, and if they did take the hours and learn, they would pass. I don't know if that's enough. I think the conversation is definitely one we need to have. It's we've seen an increase in folks going back to school. As I mentioned, most are switching industries and need the financial aid piece. So our hope is to still have the hours, but when we don't,
Roxana, have we asked him, or does he have any records of payment to the school?
this is all he has. So that goes so far back that if he'd kept a receipt, he didn't have it. The diploma was something that in some cases we haven't even gotten from others. I know that for a while we had one particular school that had closed and people were trying to take the exam or continue their education, and this question came up and we asked for receipts, and in a few cases we had printouts of the hours. He didn't have any of those. He had the diploma.
But he doesn't have any bank account, like on his own bank account statements of where he wrote checks or paid for tuition?
None that he's been able to provide. Now, if that's the board's decision, we could, he'd have to incur an expense, right? The banks won't just hand you something that old, but we could ask that that's what we need. Any proof of a check being written back in 2011 before he finished school, because clearly he wouldn't have been able to graduate in October of 2011 had he not paid it in full. So any receipt from that time, if that's what the board would like to see, I would imagine that a bank can still go back that far. They're going to charge him, but I would imagine that they could.
Yeah, I'm just frankly curious. I mean, I'm familiar with that school because it's here in Nashville, or it was in Nashville, and I'm familiar with the instructor who signed it. I don't know that he's still an instructor here in Middle Tennessee, but I do recall him working there at that time. That was a long time ago. But yeah, I'm just wondering if you can provide proof of any payment to at least, 2 pieces of information that match up, at least get you a little closer.
And that's a great point. We have a motion and a second, but if the board is more comfortable, we can continue and take the votes or have a revised motion if the board is inclined to ask for some type of financial proof. I can't imagine a bank not being able to pull something that goes far that back. I don't know what it would look like, but that's still a lot of money to complete barber school. So there has to be at least a check out there.
Is there any chance that we could, Amy said that she knows of the instructor or whoever signed that. Is there any chance that we could have that person to look at the document and tell us, would he have received that upon graduation? Or is that something, maybe even if he could just look at the document and say, yes, this looks like a real and exact copy, then maybe that would ease our minds that, yes, that person had completed school.
Yes. So that's a great point, Ms. Russell. We actually have almost the opposite with this school and formal owner. We get very current information from that school owner saying, yes, he attended my school, and here's a printout of current hours, and the printouts are dated 2021. So he is more than happy to approve the students that have gone. My concern with that is we've actually myself and our administrative manager, we've tried to discourage current documents from that school to be provided because that school's no longer open and we were seeing too many of those given. So the concern there is this isn't a licensed school anymore. I don't know that for sure if he's maintained the instructor license, but that was a little bit concerning because for a while everyone was getting current documents from that school. And so that would be the flip side. What if that school owner is happy to give these out? Do they still have the credentials to do so? So in this case, Mr. Crowder has spoken to that former school owner, and there's no doubt that if we wanted a letter from him, he'd say, "Oh yes, he attended." Because, like I said, we've actually suggested that he not hand out current documents to students because if we can't find them, we have to, and we have found many of those school hours. But if we don't, is it okay to continue accepting this information from a school that is closed?
Did I hear you correctly that you do have documentation from the school? This student's name just was not on the documentation.
We don't have that portion of time. We have a lot of other reports from that school before, after, but this chunk of time, we don't have those hours in boxes. So he attended for a full year, it looks like, between October and October 2010 to 2011. Those monthly reports for that school were not in the box they should have been. We had several brought in. We have many other years from that school, and we found a lot of students, but we could not find these where his name was on the report. And it's not because his name's not on it, Becky. I apologize. I might not be understanding. It's because those months were not there.
Does anyone else have any comments? Did I hear maybe a suggestion, Roxana, to amend the motion? We have a motion and a second. We can vote on that, or
Right. The motion and the second is to approve as is so that he would be allowed to take the exam with the thought that if he went to school and prepared, he would pass them. But our follow-up conversation has been to ask for some type of financial proof. We could amend it or take the vote as is. I welcome those pieces. But I do want to state with this particular school that we do know that the owner is available, and for the most part, he has actually handed students current documents. I don't know that that's what we want because it's no longer a licensed school. So being able to just hand out printout of hours and receipts and those kind of things on a school that isn't licensed, I'll leave that up to you. If the board is comfortable with that, I believe that owner would be more than happy to continue doing that.
I think that my thought process is I hate to keep him from getting a license if he legitimately took these hours. And while we cannot prove that he did, we also cannot prove that he did not.
Correct.
So I think that fairly we should put him through to test, and the testing will get him one way or the other. It will either get him a license or prove that he needs more education.
So Ron, if you're okay, we've got a motion and a second. Are you okay if I proceed with a roll call vote to see where we stand on it?
sure, go ahead.
Okay. So we have a motion from Ms. Parsons and a second from Ms. Judy McAllister to approve Mr. Josh Crowder to go ahead and take the exams. And we can talk a little bit further about the record retention and what to do at the end of the meeting under our new business items. So to approve this by roll call vote, Ron Gillihan.
I'm going to vote no, please.
Thank you. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield.
Yes.
Thank you. Frank Ambusa.
Roxana, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Hi, Frank.
Okay. I was disconnected somehow, some way, so I'm going to abstain due to the fact that I don't know what the vote is.
No worries. I understand and welcome back. It's part of our new world, so we get it. Ms. Amy Tansley.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Wybeck Granger. She's still not with us. Ms. Susan Witcher.
Yes.
Ms. Janie Ross.
Yes.
Thank you. So the vote passes with a yes. And we will continue knowing that we're going to touch on this again at the end. And I really appreciate that. We're going to move on to our reciprocity applications. And reciprocity starts on page 117 of our large SharePoint document. And so I'll give the board members a minute to get there. Our first applicant for reciprocity is for a cosmetology license from Florida, Miss Callie Miller. The certification shows an initial licensure in August of 2011 with no practical exam. Ms. Miller is asking for the practical exam to be waived since she is very close to the 10-year time frame. I'll let the board members review it. My recommendation was to go ahead and approve her for reciprocity. If I could ask that you have us on mute, I think I've got a couple of individuals that don't have us on mute. And if there are any questions regarding Ms. Miller's application, again, this is from Florida with a license from 2011. So August of 2021 would be the 10 years. So she would be missing the practical exam and is asking us to waive that.
Judy McAllister, I make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mona Sappenfield, and I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation, which is approve the reciprocity license. Mr. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Ambusa.
Yes.
Thank you. Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Susan Witcher,
Yes.
and Janie Ross.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have an application for reciprocity for a cosmetology license, and this is for Ms. Samantha Naira. Her application starts on page 125. The certification shows the license is a hairstylist license. An initial license date of March 2013 is shown. Ms. Naira is presented a letter explaining her unique situation, as well as a letter from an employer regarding all of her experience. We have a few states that have this type of a license, which of course Tennessee does not. My recommendation would be that she take the practical exam, but I welcome any questions or other conversations regarding her requirements.
This is Mona Sappenfield. I'll make a motion for us to go with your recommendation of her taking the practical exam.
Thank you,
Janie
Mona.
Ross, I second.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. We have a motion and a second to request that she take the practical exam only by roll call vote. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Ambusa,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Susan Witcher,
Yes.
Janie Ross.
Yes.
Thank you. And our last item for reciprocity is an application for an aesthetics license from Virginia for Dottie Maselli. The certification shows an initial licensure in 2008, and her application starts on page 134. The certification itself is on the presentation on page 137. It states that she was licensed with a waiver of examination. Ms. Maselli is licensed in Florida as well as in Virginia, but she states that Florida did not require the exams, and as the board knows, for the aesthetics license, no exams are required. Ms. Maselli is asking that the exams be waived since she has been in the industry since 2008 and did not realize that there was a period of time that Virginia waived those exams. I have, as part of her items, email communication and had requested that she provide a letter with a little bit more explanation, but I did speak to her on the phone and didn't get the letter on time for what you needed. But at this point, my recommendation would be that at least she take the practical exam, but I welcome the board members' questions or thoughts.
This is Mona Sappenfield. I'm aware of the Florida exam, and there are a lot of missing components there. So I would make a motion that she would go ahead and take that practical exam.
We have a motion by Ms. Sappenfield. Do we have a second?
Judy McAllister, I'll second that.
Thank you, Judy. We have a motion and a second, and it is to follow the recommendation, which is have her take the practical exam. And again, that is because she's not taken any state boards. So by roll call vote, Mr. Ron Gillihan.
Yes.
Thank you. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Ambusa,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Susan Witcher,
Yes.
Janie Ross.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Granger, by chance, are you with us? Okay. Thank you. That concludes our reciprocity applications. Next on our agenda, we have our miscellaneous, and this time we do have several items. The miscellaneous presentation starts on, give me a second, page 143. The first item is a request to update the dates for a change in our continuing education course. This was presented, of course, along with all the other course providers at the December 2020 board meeting. Ms. Anderson is presenting on behalf of KINCC Group. She's requested approval of continuing education seminars for 7 different sessions. 2 of those were virtual sessions, and they were split into 4-hour increments. She is needing to change those. There was no interest in doing those splits, and so she's moved those particular dates, which is May 1st and 2nd, and October 2nd and 3rd, to be the traditional 8-hour sessions for 2 days. But I would need a motion for this change, and then we will be updating the website so that instructors don't get this wrong.
I make a motion to approve the change.
Thank you, Ms. Tanksley. We have a motion by Ms. Amy Tanksley. Do we have a second?
Mona
Patricia Parsons.
Sappenfield.
Thank you, Ms. Sappenfield. We have a motion and a second by roll call vote. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Gambusa,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Susan Witcher,
Yes.
Janie Ross.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item on your presentation to review is on page 146, and this is informational only, but the schools do a really good job of letting us know when they're making a change. This is from West Tennessee College of Cosmetology. They've presented a letter explaining that the school is adding 2,400 square feet for additional offices, classrooms, and a projection room. The information will be added to the file and doesn't really need anything else unless the board members have any questions or concerns. It is not impacting services provided to the public, but rather classroom space and all within the same building. Okay, thank you. The next item is a waiver for the 6 months extension, and this is on your presentation, starting with page 148. This is pursuant to Rule 0440-1-.10, which states that an applicant must apply for and pay for the original license within 6 months after passing the examination. The board may, for good cause, waive this requirement. The board has previously authorized the director to approve these extensions for 6 additional months for a total of 1 year only. Ms. Erin Burkett is provided an explanation that she did not have the funds to pay for the license. She passed the practical on August 7th of 2019. She's asking for the board to waive the need for her to retest. You have both her exams in front of you, and we would need a motion in order to waive that.
Make a motion to waive. This is Mona Sappenfield.
Thank you, Ms. Sapphire. We have a motion to go ahead and accept the request and waive the need for her to retest. Do we have a second?
I second. This is Judy.
Thank you, Judy. We have a motion and a second by Ms. Judy McAllister. By roll call vote, Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly Barger.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Ambusa,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Susan Witcher,
Yes.
and Janie Ross.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have a request for an approval of a manicures license from Anna Fan. Ms. Fan was licensed by Reciprocity from Texas in 2011. The license was revoked in December 2019 for failure to obtain licensure as the statute requires. Since then, she attended a school in Tennessee and has passed both exams. Her request is for the board to approve her license. Her information starts on page 154.
Patricia Parsons, I make a motion to approve since she's passed her test.
Thank you, Ms. Parsons. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Janie Ross, I second.
Thank you. I believe I heard 2 individuals, but I've got Ms. Janie Ross for the second. By roll call vote, Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger.
Yes.
Thank you. Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Ambusa,
Yep.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Susan Witcher,
Yes.
Janie Ross.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have a request to waive the need to retest. This is pursuant to 0200-1-.10, which states that an applicant must apply for and pay for an original license within 6 months. This is under the Barber statute. The board may, for good cause, waive this requirement. The board has previously authorized the director to approve these extensions for 6 additional months for a total of only 1 year. Mr. Terrence Schulark provided an explanation that he had problems with the system and was unable to get help. He passed the practical exam on April 22nd of 2019. He starts on page 159 if the board would like to review his information.
Roxana, are you wanting a motion to approve?
Yes, ma'am. His request is that the board waive his request to retest, given that he's past the time. We had a similar individual with Ms. Alicia Jimerson, I believe, as well as with Aaron Burkett. They were under the cosmetology statute, but it's basically the same statement.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. We have a motion by Ms. Judy McAllister. Do we have a second?
This is Mona Sappenfield. I'll second the
Thank you,
motion.
Ms. Sappenfield. We have a motion and a second by roll call vote. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Ambusa,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Susan Witcher,
Yes.
and Janie Roth.
Yes.
Thank you, board members. Next, we have a request to continue taking the PSI exams for a manicure license by Ms. Thai Kim Lien Trin. An incident occurred in PSI during the theory exam on January the 2nd, 2019 at the Memphis testing facility. Ms. Trin was sent a letter explaining that she had to wait 2 years before she could continue testing given the incident. She is now past those 2 years and has sent an email requesting that she can be unblocked and continue testing due to a language barrier. She wasn't able to provide anything more specific, but she's past the time and asking to be unblocked. So we would need a motion in order to proceed.
Patricia Parsons, I make a motion to proceed with her exams.
Thank you, Ms. Parsons. Do we have a second?
Yes, this is Amy Tanksley. I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Tanksley. We have a motion and a second to allow her to be unblocked from PSI by roll call vote. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Ambusa,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Susan Witcher,
Yes.
and Janie Roth.
Yes.
Thank you. Our last item under our miscellaneous category is a request from Ms. Cody Lee Hansberry with the branded lash, and this particular item is on page 164 of the presentation. This is a request to have certain equipment that is part of our rule relevant to 0440-02-0.07, number 2 specifically for skincare shops. In this particular case, Ms. Hansberry is presenting under the information for you the fact that she will only offer lash extension services. So on page 164 and 165, specifically, she lists the items that she does not need since she wishes to only operate as a lash extension service, and some of that equipment would need to be purchased, incur an expense, and she would never use. So I leave this up for the board to review, talk about, and if allowed, then give us a motion. I do have in front of me, because I'm in the building, I actually printed the current shop equipment list. There aren't that many differences, and as the board will recall, at the October rulemaking hearing, most of these changes are really changes in words of what's used and what's not, simplifying the adequate restrooms to be one. But I'm happy to go over that list if the board so chooses. But basically, she's listed the items that she'd like exempted from her skincare shop if the board approves.
Roxana, there are 2 items that she's listed that she does not want to have, and I don't think that can be an exception. The first is a blood exposure incident, and the second is the sharps or biohazard disposal. Those things, even if just for accidents, need to be present. So I know she doesn't intend to draw blood, but there's always a chance that that could happen.
I got you. And those are both on the new set of rules that will be moving through the pipeline, hopefully here soon and approved in June. The blood exposure kit is changed to one blood exposure kit, not spill kit, but exposure. And then you are correct on the sharps. It has one sharps container for biohazard material removal at each station. That is how the skincare shop is listing the equipment. So would you be in favor, or is it too soon to ask the questions, of waiving the other items?
I would be in favor of waiving the other items, just those 2 have to be present, in addition to the ones that she has said that she will provide.
Okay. Is that a motion? Do we have other conversations?
Roxana, this is
Yes, sir.
Ron, and I feel like whenever we start looking at waiving certain items for certain individuals, that we're really creating a very slippery slope. If you waive this one for me, then what do we waive for somebody else? I think it's a dangerous thing to do at this juncture. We've got some new requirements and regulations coming out. I have great trepidation about waiving the requirements that are already in the rules. If someone wants to open a business, it's there, and that's part of it. If we need to change those things, then we can address it and take out whatever the industry thinks that we don't need. But in the meantime, I think that we're setting a very dangerous precedent by waiving certain things.
And I hear you, Ron. I get that. And we're getting more and more of these. I just want to kind of add a little bit more here for the board members to debate. Not that you don't already have enough. We're seeing businesses want to move to Tennessee and getting calls. And I don't have the exact number because often this is the first that's the first thing we tell them. In the rules is the list of equipment that is mandatory. In the rules, you have to get it all. And so we give that to everyone. The business owner that pushes back some or asks the question, which is it makes sense, is I'm not offering all those services. I've had this business in XYZ states, and why would I need, and I'll just pick on the facial steamer, if I'm not planning on ever offering that. I'm focusing only on this business model. And you're right, our rules right now don't have that flexibility. They do under the mobile shop. When you all created the rules and worked on them so hard, we added that piece that if the service is not going to be offered in the mobile shop, the director, and obviously it's my team on the staff, can waive anything that you're not going to offer services in. That statement doesn't exist in the equipment. And so when individuals either don't have the money for the extra equipment expense or really are pushing back and question the equipment they won't use, that's when we're bringing it back before you.
Yes, ma'am, and I appreciate every bit of that. I do. I understand. I think we need to work on those rules a little bit and see if we can't take a look at some of that stuff going forward.
On Ron's statement, this is Mona Sappenfield. I think it's a slippery slope, even from like a consumer standpoint. If they are going to go to a skincare shop, this is what they kind of expect there. And who's not to say that as part of the lash business, she might have a contract employee come in and do facials and need a steamer. So I I don't like bending this for this person and that person. If we need to, break it apart, it by rules, we could maybe address that at a later time. I'm not in favor of, picking it apart for individuals that are moving to Tennessee. I've operated in 6 states and we followed the rules. And it's just a simpler way for also like the inspections. So I wouldn't really be for changing everything for individuals.
I agree with that statement. I think our opportunity is to address the rules as a whole, and ask those individuals, perhaps Roxana, to make sure they come to that meeting that we have when we're going through those things, so we can get to the real basics of what shops need, that are not negotiable.
We
Patricia
absolutely
Parsons.
want to do the things that are bringing more workers and bringing more opportunities to Tennessee. We want to make sure we're getting people to work. Again, I'm looking at her letter here, and a sharps container is just a couple of dollars, and a blood spill, a blood exposure kit is really just a few dollars. It's not a significant business expense, and that's just the little ones. And if she has larger things in there, again, it is where we're at right now, but we definitely want to get people to work as soon as we can and get those shops open.
Patricia Parsons. I'm in agreement with Ron and Mona. I think the rules are there and they need to be followed until they're changed.
This is something that I really think that we should look into quickly if that's going to need to change, because otherwise, as long as she's doing this in a mobile shop, then she would be legal. But we're saying if she has a brick and mortar shop, she's not. And so that kind of hurts my feelings that I feel like they're better inspected in a brick and mortar location, because we can find them at any moment. We don't have to notify them that we're coming. And so for us to say, well, get yourself a mobile shop and then you can do it. But if you want to have a brick and mortar, that just seems like it doesn't line up very well.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that's the opportunity to address what those rules are for brick and mortar shops.
The downside to this, and it's not that it's a downside, is we just finished the rules, right? So this was the rulemaking hearing that dealt with equipment in October, and we were probably so caught up in the other changes to bring to update words to what they needed to be and all that, that this specialty that we're seeing, specialty shops that just do eyelashes, just do makeup, it probably has increased since then, but Hugh and I will look at that. It's just not always great to go back to back with rules and have missed this piece, but we'll definitely look at that and open a new set of rules as soon as possible and have the board then obviously really debate what is it that, how do we want to add that? Do we want the language to be there at the end of the equipment that simply says based on equipment not needed, or specialty you might be offering the equipment that isn't needed may be waived? I mean, I think in legalese, that's what the mobile piece says, right? The mobile shop has to be associated with a brick and mortar. So that's why everyone isn't doing it. It's not that easy to do, but we can waive based on the services they are going to offer. So if they don't need hot and cold running water because they're not going to do anything with water, that could be something that they don't have to have. And so we'll definitely look at that. That is a good thing to consider for the next round. Do we have a motion so far, or any other thoughts before we move on? Because this will give Betty in particular and John and myself some guidance, because we are always encouraging and pointing to the equipment rule. But when the conversation continues and continues, at least we'll know what we do for the time being.
This is Mona Sappenfield. I'll make a motion that we deny this applicant's request to change the rules for her specialty.
Okay. We have a motion to deny the request to waive some of the equipment, is what I'll put. And Mona, does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
Okay. And do we have a second?
Patricia
Thank you,
Parsons,
Boss.
I'll
I
second.
second the motion.
Patricia Parsons, I've got, I was able to pick up your motion. So I've got a motion by Mona Sappenfield, a second by Patricia Parsons by roll call vote, and we are denying the request to waive any of the equipment. So the applicant will have to follow the equipment list for shops as the rules state them in order to pass the inspection. So if I've got that motion correct, by roll call vote, Ron Gillihan.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Becky Russell.
I would vote no to deny.
Thank you. Kelly Barger.
Yes.
Thank you. Judy McAllister.
Yes.
Patricia Parsons.
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield.
Yes.
Frank Gambusa.
Yes.
Amy Tanksley.
Yes.
Susan Witcher.
Yes.
Janie Ross.
Yes.
Checking to see if Ms. Yvette Granger was able to join us. Okay. Thank you so much, board members. We are getting close to wrapping up. We are next on to the director's portion. And let me get a page number for you. I believe we're on page 167. I was able to email everyone the financial documents as well as our licensing numbers. So let me start with the financials. These are numbers through the end of January 2021. It has us at a deficit of $135,357 for the month of January. This is causing a deficit for the year of $98,250. There's no easy way to describe that. If you look at the lines that are provided on this document, the entire amount that flipped our program from a surplus to a deficit is listed under other. The expense came in at $242,749. That other has a very large financial impact from a lawsuit that has been taken care of. The big numbers in here, and so as the board is very aware, it had to do with high school education on the Barber side, and so this is our impact. On a lighter note, as far as the financials, I've kind of looked at all of our revenues and expenses for the last few months before fiscal closes, and I don't envision us ending in a deficit. We will be able to recover. But I do want to point out that due to that particular change, the administration put forth a modernization bill that is moving within the legislation to look at issues such as high school requirements, anything where we might be asking for something that is reducing mobility or taking someone, causing an undue burden. And so this bill has gotten pretty far already and approved, and it will be addressing something such as high school. So that's the positive to this, but clearly there's a financial impact, and if you have any questions, I welcome them, but I wanted to have an opportunity to kind of explain that because it hit us this particular month. So those are our financials. Any questions, board members? Okay, I think this was emailed to you, but it will also be part of our minutes when we approve these in June. The other item that was emailed was an update of our licensing numbers. We've seen some increases, so I'm not comparing them to previous years, but I can do that also. You know, once a year, we're basically at 6,868 licenses on the Barber side, and that includes our licensees as well as the shops and the schools. And then we have a total of 68,187, I'm sorry, 61,319 active licenses in the cosmetology side. I do break down all of those specific license types. Our shops are also broken down by category, and then the schools, of course. And what I did also for your information, and this was asked of me in one of the instructor seminars, they wanted to see how many instructors we had in the state of Tennessee, and then based on their actual discipline that they can teach. So hopefully that is helpful to any of you. If we're able to pull it, I'm always happy to get that request so we can provide all this information. And then the last item I listed was our hair braider registrations. We have a total of 1,584, and that is as of July of 2019. So any questions before we proceed? Thoughts? Okay, we're on to our last item, and I know it's been a long meeting, so I appreciate everybody here with us. The last item I have is under our new business. If you could make sure that you've got us on mute. We've got someone that is coming through still, but I appreciate that. So under new business, I had added this discussion about old school hour reports, records of retention, and how to kind of handle these. We've got someone that does not have us on mute. If you could check to make sure that we're on mute. Thank you. So the hours we discussed briefly today, and Mr. Ron Gillahan made a great point. What happens if we have 75 students that ask for these and have some type of a attestation form filled out and very little else. So this is something that I just wanted us to talk about, but it sounds like we might be all in agreement that these still need to be kept, and we still not get rid of these hours. We've gone back and forth just because it has been so time consuming to have boxes brought to the building. As you know, we're not in the building every day now. We rotate, and so we're coming in when we have to look for those things. And for the most part, we found what we've needed, but we have run into some situations where we don't. And I welcome, a conversation regarding this. Our record retention would be that we could shred these school hours, but inevitably we have someone like Mr. Crowder, still needing the hours after many years.
Roxanne, it's Mona. Is
Yes,
there a state? I mean, I know every agency in the state has some kind of records keeping
yes.
policies and things. So is there just like one standard policy that, regardless of what we would request, we're still going to be under that policy? Or what does the state say about all these manual versus the electronic records? Because I would
Well,
think the
yeah.
electronic records would be pretty easy to keep.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have no intention on, at least for now, getting rid of our electronic record retention, because it doesn't really take up a space that would justify why we would need to. And obviously, we've fixed some of the hours report issues by giving a number even to the high schools and the Tennessee College of Applied Technology schools. So they're being scanned in. So there is a policy for what's on technology, and it follows, I believe, the same record retention. We'd need to keep it between 7 to 10 years, depending on what the specific report is. But we are not purging anything that's already part of our scanned file. We started scanning in 2012 and have moved forward. So the issue we're running into on occasion is these older records that weren't scanned in when FileNet, that's the name of the server that, or the system we used early on until 2015, until we rolled to Core, that you all are now very familiar with. we had that previous database, and those records are not rolling into core, unfortunately, at least not now, but we can still access them. So we have a lot of monthly hours reports in there, and school reports especially. Complaint history is in there. It's these older items. The record retention report starts on page 173, and it does impact licensing. So fire prevention, permits, complaint files, certifications, registration, which would be our items. And so we would have to have them for 7 years, which we do. So um, we've tossed the idea of what do we do with the older boxes? Can we get rid of them? And the vast majority of what is in storage are the school boxes with hours. So I just wanted us to take a minute, since we saw the situation with Mr. Croter, and talk about those. When a student waits so long for this information, you know, based on the records retention, we wouldn't have to have those hours anymore. And many of our schools aren't open anymore. So would we ever be okay to shred these boxes, or is the board's opinion that we continue what we're doing, which is keeping them in storage, paying for the storage, because it is a monthly fee, and then bringing them and hoping that we find the reports?
So right now you keep them for 7 years, right?
We keep them forever. We have not shredded any boxes. We have some very old boxes in storage that we are going to start reviewing to shred. And we would do that if we know that the applicant is licensed and we have the information and so forth. The monthly hours are a little bit different. So that is the specific one I wanted us to talk about, because we don't have the manpower to be able to bring all those in here and scan them. And so right now, we just don't have a good path. And maybe that is what the board would like to do, is have us hire a temp, maybe here a few months down the road when social distancing isn't such a concern and we're at a better place, and we bring in boxes, and it will be several months, if not a full year, because either John Lillard or myself would have to be able to verify that the information was scanned appropriately. Because if we're spending the money to have a temporary employee scan them in, we would have to review that before we can shred them. Unless the board's decision is those hours are so old, here's a better path. And I don't know what the better path would be. We're talking about, you know, students that went and didn't do anything with those hours for quite a while, close to 10 years, right?
So,
Roxana, do we?
Is that what you're saying? You have 10 years worth of stuff?
We have
You said
we have
forever.
more than that. Yeah, we have more than that in storage that I know of. We've never authorized for monthly hours reports to be shredded. And so we're looking at a lot, probably in excess of 100, 200 boxes. We attempted at one point, John and I, to try to divide and conquer and see if it could be done. And I mean, there was just no way without a temporary employee being brought in. It took hours just to unstaple and prepare documents to be ready to be scanned. A full day was lost just in that for one box. And so those boxes those reports have never been discarded, shredded. We knew their importance, so they're there. The problem we ran into that you saw this week with Mr. Josh Croter is we didn't find the boxes that had those particular months, and we've run into that, whether they were mislabeled, never boxed at the time. We just don't know. Neither John or I were here at the time. So we're going based on what's in the box, and we checked as many boxes as we could, but we didn't find them. And that's when it occurred to us to have the conversation of the records retention, because anything from 2012 on, which is 9 years old, is already in our system and scanned, and hopefully we won't run into that in the future. It's these old items.
I mean, if it was my business, I'd just get rid of them.
I know.
If you have the 7 years, you need to have.
Yeah.
And then we can just deal, because you're talking few people anyway would probably need that. We would just case by case that at a board meeting, whatever their request might be, to have an expense for storage, and the fact that it might not even be effective if and when necessary to go digging. It just sounds like a inefficient way to conduct business to me.
This is Mona Sapin. I would agree with Frank, and I probably even have a disorder on getting things straightened up and getting rid of things. You know, that those boxes could be fire hazards and you know, attracting rodents. You know, I
Oh,
just
yeah.
think get rid of them. At 10 years, I think is very sufficient, even though some of the guidelines are for 7 years. But I would just back up from there and say, you know, fire, you know, something. They must be really blessed to avoid all the disasters that Nashville's had.
This is Patricia Parsons. I know the Department of Ed requires us to keep ours for 10 years on file or in boxes, and that's what we're trying to deal with, is taking them out as 10 years are up and shredding them as a school. You know, and just, I think 10 years is long enough to keep or for anybody to reapply, unless they've got all their documentations from their schools.
Okay. Well, and I love the suggestion that as these come up, we take them on a case-by-case basis with whatever they may have. And hopefully that's the case, right? They have a receipt or a way to get it or something. So anybody else, board members? I think I appreciate this conversation. I know John does, because we've really just sat down and tried to figure out how we could do it ourselves and get them in there and figure a path. But the number of hours that would take, just looking at what we attempted with one box really made us want to talk to you about it.
Pulling those staples, Roxana?
The unfolding, yeah,
Oh,
and
gosh.
in some cases they're just not legible, as our school owners will attest. Those monthly hours were you know, different. They weren't kept on Excel, so they're not that easy to read either. And you're right, pointing out to the boxes that survived have been blessed, but still all of that. So any other thoughts or conversations? And if not, if we are inclined to say to hold on to the boxes for 10 years, we know that our system has everything from 2012. We might just be keeping 1 or 2 more years and then follow the records retention, and even then some. That said 7 years. Shred the others. We would be documenting that and moving forward. And I would love a motion to proceed with that if the board's inclined.
Well, then
So, this Ron, I just wanted to throw in this, that you know, I think what we've decided or discussed is okay and great. However, I think really the question that we really want to try to get to, maybe at our next meeting we can talk about it some more, is in the event somebody does come up and has an issue and they don't have records like this, if we can come up with something that's more uniform and coherent and cohesive, so that we could require the same types of information from an applicant, so that we have some direction we can give them. So if they call and say, "What do I need? It's been so long, I don't have records," we can all kind of be on the same page of what we would like to see them present to us, whether it's receipts or you know, documentation they may have had from the school, you know, those kind of items. So I think that's really the backside of this whole conversation. So
I would
I agree
like
with
to
you.
have a notification on the board's website before we do destroy those documents or get rid of them or whatever. Just put a notification on the website for a few months stating that they will be destroyed and that they can contact the board prior to that date to get any records that they want. You know, they can do a certification of hours or whatever they might need that would be 10 years old. Although I doubt that they're going to be checking the board's website for them, that just
Correct.
kind of ensures that if anybody needed them, you know, they
Yeah.
have the ability to grab those. I just would hate for us to destroy them and the very next day somebody asked for them. So I just think that would be a good business.
Great point.
They don't seem to be too worried about them, though, do they?
No.
Not at all.
This is Patricia
I say
Parsons.
we-
I make a motion to go ahead and make a motion to be able to destroy the records after 10 years and posting it on the website to let the public know ahead of time.
I'll second.
Fantastic. I have a motion by Ms. Patricia Parsons and a second by Frank Gambusa. And the suggestion, part of the motion is to post on the board's website that monthly hours reports that are 10 years or older will be destroyed. And we'll give plenty of time, maybe 2-3 months of when that'll happen, because we will have to internally do a report that lists the box that's being destroyed and follow our record retention requirements for that, make sure nothing is missed. But we will be holding on to 10 years of records. And then to Ron's point, the note that I've made is that for any applicant that wants these hours either released to another state or in many cases put through to test, we will ask that they complete the attestation, because that at least gives us their words of what they did, provide a diploma of some sort or proof of hours, any type of report that has hours, and a financial document. Maybe from the get-go, yes, they will incur that expense with their bank, but I think that came up today and it's a very good point. They should be able to prove at least one payment to the school at some point. So we'll ask for that as well. So if I've missed anything, Patricia or Frank, let me know. Otherwise, we'll do roll call vote. Does it sound like the motion and we're on the same page?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Roll call vote to approve this. Ron Gillihan,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Kelly Barger,
Yes.
Judy McAllister,
Yes.
Patricia Parsons,
Yes.
Ona Sappenfield,
Yes.
Frank Gambusa,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Ms. Wyvette Granger, not here, thank you. Susan Witcher,
Yes.
and Ms. Janie Ross. Ms. Ross, you're on mute. I can see Ms. Ross, but I don't think she's able to go off mute. We have quorum, so we are good. Mr. Gillihan, I will turn it over to you, sir. I don't think I have anything else.
Roxana, I'm looking, I don't see Mr. Hunt still on here. We didn't quite dispatch with his application yet. Many of the concerns that I had mirrored the concerns that I had on the estheticians program. He had addressed a number of concerns from his first presentation. I think I still saw many inconsistencies in that. It pains me to hold anybody up from having their license. I wish he was on here, to answer a few questions. He might be able to clear some things up and get sorted out. I guess I will stop with, I had many of the same concerns in his program and I outlined them as we were going through it earlier. So I will stop and see if anyone would like to make a motion either to allow him to proceed or to have him actually represent and be present to answer his questions.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion?
Do you want the motion to be for him to make those changes, submit them to the board, and to be at for our next meeting?
Judy, it's Ron. Again, I had a lot of the same concerns. I think I would like to see him actually complete that and actually get it into that solid form as we asked the other school to do today. I had outlined the things, several of the concerns I had earlier, and I'm sure he can go back and take a look at the video or the transcripts and see what those things were.
Yes, the recording will be posted to the board's website under today's meeting date. It's usually 2 to 3 days, so it'll be there. And I will, when we get off, send an email to Mr. Hunt, just let him know that we really regretted that he wasn't able to continue on the call. And as we all aware, sometimes technology just doesn't do what we need it to do. So that's likely what happened. But if I'm hearing Mr. Gillahan correctly, based on the other school that is going to need to represent in June, it sounds like that would be the inclination, that the items he needs to fix still need to be reviewed by the board members, but we would need a motion in a second if that's what you were looking at, Ms. McAllister.
Okay, I will make that motion
Okay.
the way that you and Mr. Gillian stated.
Okay. We have a motion by Ms. Judy McAllister, and this is to have all the items previously mentioned that will be on the audio posted to the board's website corrected and submitted as far in advance as he'd like to submit them to me. That's perfectly good. I will try to review them in greater detail, but that the board has to review them at the June 7th board meeting. And if that's the case, we would need a second.
I'll second it. This is Mona.
Thank you, Ms. Sappenfield. We have a motion and a second by roll call vote. Mr. Ron Gillahan, and this is to deny and ask to be represented.
Yes.
Thank you. Becky Russell.
Yes.
Thank you. Kelly Barger.
Yes.
Thank you. Judy McAllister.
Yes.
Patricia Parsons.
Yes.
Mona Sappenfield.
Yes.
Frank Ambusa.
Yes.
Amy Tanksley. Susan Witcher.
Yes.
And Janie Ross. Okay, Ms. Ross isn't with us. We still have quorum. I know I said I was done. I just looked at a note that I wanted to share, and this is sad but uplifting news that I know all of our board members take heart when you see licensees that have been practicing so long. So I'm happy to share a licensee that has been with us and licensed since 1945, Ms. Callie Terrell from the Memphis area. She was a cosmetologist and esthetician, passed away last week, and her life was just remarkable in the fact that she worked until the end. So for 76 years, she was behind the chair, and I know that you all will appreciate what that means. Just the way she conducted herself in 2018. They had done an interview of her, but I just thank licensees that have that dedication, that ethical passion to treat their clients like family members. Just a really cool story for those of you that want to take a look. I believe that her services, the celebration of her life is going to be done in the Memphis area this coming Saturday. And so just something positive to share with students, especially for you all that teach and see students young. It's a good example to give of people that love what they're doing and do it for so long. And it was just really cool to read about her. So I just wanted to share that. And Chairman Gillahan, I am done. I promise I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Roxana. Yes.
Well, I was just going to ask if Roxana, is there any way of obtaining that interview? Was it a written interview or was it visual?
It was visual. I will be happy. Anything that I find on her, I will do a quick email to all of you to be able to see. And our media folks are going to do something this Saturday when her memory of her service and all that takes place as well. So I'll be happy to get something out to you. She was just very, very cool to see her passion. And again, 76 years. When students are joining the industry, you can all relate. And Frank, as you train your people coming in, it's just to see that devotion to her clients really touched our hearts. My entire team read about her and we were all touched.
No doubt. I'd be very interested in anything you could obtain. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ron.
Roxana, thank you so much, and your staff for all that you guys do. And for our members, thank you for your hard work. I look forward to the times when we can actually meet in person again. And until then, I hope we all stay safe and be blessed. And good luck as we go about our dives. Thank you for attending today.
Thank you all. Frank,
Bye, everybody.
Ron, we don't need a motion, do we, for this? Just the time. I've got 11:57, so we made it right at about noon.
I don't think we need a motion.
Good.
Okay.
We're all
We're dismissed.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for y'all's work. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.